Today, we're diving into one of the most surprising and strategically important developments in the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia. A Ukrainian long-range drone strike has reportedly hit one of Russia's largest and most sensitive early warning radar systems, and what happened afterward has created shockwaves far beyond the battlefield. In this video, we'll walk through what this radar was, why it mattered, how Ukraine managed to strike it, and what the consequences could be for Russia's defense posture and the wider region. Let's get into it. The strike itself wasn't just another drone attack. It was a direct hit on a critical part of Russia's early warning network, a system designed to detect incoming ballistic missiles. These radars are not ordinary military assets. They are connected to Russia's nuclear command structure and are considered essential for national security. The fact that Ukraine was able to reach this deep, bypassing Russian defenses, immediately raised questions about how vulnerable Russia's strategic infrastructure really is. The radar that was struck is part of a large network spread across Russia's borders. These installations monitor the skies for any potential missile threats. They give Russian leadership minutes of early warning if a long-range missile were ever launched against the country. For decades, Moscow has invested enormous resources to build these systems, believing they were untouchable and far beyond the reach of any enemy except major nuclear powers. The idea that a Ukrainian drone, likely costing only a fraction of the radar's price, could penetrate Russian air defenses and land a damaging blow was completely unexpected. In the hours after the strike, Russian military bloggers and analysts appeared stunned. Some claimed the radar had only suffered minor damage, while others suggested it had been seriously compromised. Satellite images later revealed scorch marks, debris, and signs of a direct impact. Even if the radar wasn't completely destroyed, taking it offline for days or weeks would already be a massive problem for Moscow. These radars do not have quick replacements. They take years to build, test, calibrate, and integrate into the wider warning system. What made the situation even more surprising was the geographic distance. The radar was located far inside Russia, not anywhere near the front lines. Traditionally, drones used at the beginning of the war could barely travel a few dozen kilometers. But Ukraine's drone industry has been quietly improving, producing long-range drones capable of flying hundreds and even over 1,000 kilometers. These new drones have become one of Ukraine's most effective tools for striking deep inside Russian territory, especially since Western partners have placed certain limits on using supplied weapons inside Russia. This forced Ukraine to innovate, and now the results are visible. The fact that these drones are able to avoid Russian air defenses is another critical point. Russian anti-drone systems have improved, but the sheer size of the country makes it impossible to cover every meter of airspace. Ukraine has learned how to exploit these gaps. The drones fly low, fast, and autonomously, constantly adjusting their routes to avoid detection. As a result, the Russian early warning system is facing challenges it wasn't designed for. These radars weren't built to detect small drones. They were built to track large ballistic missiles coming from thousands of kilometers away. After the strike, the Kremlin faced an uncomfortable question. If Ukraine can reach strategic radars, what else can it reach? Some of these installations sit near missile launch sites, command centers, and strategic bases. Suddenly, areas of Russia believed to be beyond any threat are now within Ukraine's reach. That's a psychological and strategic blow, not just a tactical one. Russian officials initially tried to downplay the incident, suggesting the radar was still operational. But even if that were true, the breach alone is significant. Military experts argue that if a radar suffers any structural damage, even a minor hit could affect its calibration. A slight misalignment can reduce accuracy or create blind spots. Such blind spots are the last thing Russia would want in a system that detects nuclear threats. Ukraine, on the other hand, sees the strike as a symbol of its growing technological capabilities. Throughout the war, Ukraine has turned to ingenuity and adaptation to level the playing field against a much larger enemy. Drone production has been one of its greatest success stories. Ukrainian officials later hinted that this strike was only the beginning, and more long-range capabilities are coming. What happened next is perhaps even more interesting. Russia reportedly began repositioning some of its air defense systems away from the front lines and toward its strategic radar sites. This means fewer systems are available to support Russian operations in Ukraine. Every long-range surfaced, where system moved away from the battlefield, is one less shield for Russian troops. Ukraine understands this perfectly. By threatening deep Russian infrastructure, it forces Moscow to stretch its defenses thin. The reaction inside Russia was complicated. Some commentators accused the military of failing to protect critical sites. Others called for harsher retaliation against Ukraine, but the deeper worry among Russia's strategic community was simple. If one radar can be hit, more can be hit. And if those radars go offline, Russia's nuclear early warning network becomes less reliable. This is where the situation becomes extremely sensitive. Early warning radars are part of what is known as the strategic stability architecture. In simpler terms, they are meant to prevent misunderstandings that could lead to catastrophic decisions. If a country cannot properly detect incoming missiles, it might miscalculate or overreact. That's why these systems are usually considered off-limits in most conflicts. The fact that one was struck is a rare and serious escalation, even if the strike was conventional and not aimed at creating strategic instability. Ukraine has argued that Russia has used these radar sites to support its war in ways unrelated to early warning functions, making them legitimate military targets. However, from an international perspective, this incident highlights how unconventional warfare, especially drone warfare, enriched strategic systems that were once thought immune. As the story continued to unfold, military analysts outside the region began asking how Russia would respond. One expected response was strengthening the protection around other radar systems. Another possibility was increasing electronic warfare coverage, but a third idea emerged. Russia might accelerate its development of counter-drone technologies. These include new detection radars capable of spotting small drones, directed energy weapons, and larger numbers of mobile air defense units. Ukraine, meanwhile, has shown no intention of stopping its deep strike campaign. Its strategy is straightforward: pressure Russia where it is weakest and force it to spend resources defending areas it assumed were safe. This approach has helped Ukraine compensate for shortages in artillery, missiles, and manpower. Instead of matching Russia weapon for weapon, Ukraine has chosen to make Russia defend a much larger territory at a much higher cost. In many ways, this is a preview of what future warfare may look like. Large, expensive systems, built over decades, can now be threatened by small, cheap, mass-produced drones. Countries around the world are watching closely. The lesson is clear: even the most advanced defense networks can be vulnerable if they were not designed for the new era of unmanned and autonomous weapons. But what happened immediately after the strike is where things get more dramatic. Russia reportedly scrambled air defense units, launched counter-drone sweeps, and even disrupted GPS signals in nearby regions. This sudden activity indicated that they were worried about additional drones. When militaries react like this, it shows they're unsure of where the next threat might come from. Reports also suggested that Russia inspected other radars in its early warning chain to ensure they had not been targeted or disabled. This level of internal checking shows just how seriously they took the incident. Even if the strike didn't cripple the radar, it created doubt. And doubt is extremely dangerous in strategic defense operations. There is another major consequence. Russia's early warning network is designed with overlapping fields of coverage. If one radar goes down, others can usually cover the gap. But this redundancy assumes that only one station would ever be offline at a time. If Ukraine continues successfully striking deep into Russia, multiple radars could be threatened. That possibility forces Russia into a harder defensive posture, increasing tensions and raising strategic instability. Another key point is the political symbolism. For Ukraine, the message is clear. Russia's depth is no longer a sanctuary. For Russia, the message is frightening. If they cannot protect their most sensitive assets, their military credibility is shaken. In wars, symbolism often matters just as much as tactical results. Looking ahead, analysts believe Ukraine will continue expanding its drone capabilities. Newer drones with longer ranges, better navigation systems, and heavier payloads are already in development. Meanwhile, Russia is trying to adapt, but defending an enormous territory against dozens or hundreds of incoming drones is incredibly difficult and expensive. The war has fundamentally changed how we understand military power. It's no longer just about who has more tanks or jets. It's about who can innovate faster, who can adapt, and who can use technology in unexpected ways. Ukraine's drone strike on Russia's largest radar is a perfect example. It reshaped the conversation overnight. As this conflict continues, we may see even more dramatic technological surprises. Both sides are racing to out-innovate each other. But what happened here will likely be studied by militaries around the world for years to come. A single drone strike exposed vulnerabilities in one of the most guarded military systems in Russia. And that means the landscape of modern warfare has changed forever. Ukraine knows this gives it leverage. Russia knows this exposes weaknesses, and the rest of the world understands that a new era of long-range autonomous warfare has arrived. Whether more strikes happen or whether Russia manages to harden its defenses, one thing is clear: nothing is the same after this incident. This strike wasn't just a military event. It was a strategic message, a technological milestone, and a geopolitical shock all at once. And now everyone is waiting to see what happens next. If you want the description, tags, image prompts, or thumbnail prompt like before, just tell me and I'll generate them.